Join me in the blanket fort as we venture into the realm of the unknown. This is Painted Ink. All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about the Lemp Mansion. So this place terrifies me to no end, and I have no idea as to why. It started after I saw the story some years ago while sitting down with my cousin, who is from St. Louis. Shout out to Sarah and my other St. Louis relatives. And it just got under my skin. So even looking at pictures of the house give me the chills. But why? Tonight we're going to get into that as to just why the Lemp Mansion is so scary. And also, was the family cursed? Because, damn. So to understand the hauntings, we need to start from the beginning, starting with Johann Lemp. So Johann Adam Lemp would come to St. Louis from Eschweiler, Germany in 1838. So he would start with a grocery store, where in addition to selling foodstuffs, he would sell his lager, or homemade beer. So unlike any beer in St. Louis at the time, this lager was lighter in color, crisp, and clean tasting. And this beer became so popular that within 2 years after opening his grocery store, he abandons being a grocer and opens a brewery to start producing his product. Johann Lemp would have 8 kids with his wife. Her name was Julia. Actually, it was his second wife. So you have William, Anna, Louis, Charles, Frederick, Hilda, Edwin, and Elsa. And when Johann Lemp died, his son William J. Lemp Sr. would take over as head of the brewing company. So he would build a large brewery at Cherokee Street and Carondelet Avenue to accommodate for manufacturing. So by this point, the Lemp Brewing Company was the largest in the city, and the Lemps were the picture of wealth and opulence in St. Louis society. So to add to this opulence, because William was extra, William Lemp's father-in-law, Jacob Feichhardt, would purchase what would become the Lemp family home. So the home that gives me the creeps. This house was huge and impressive with 33 rooms, but it wasn't enough for William J. Lemp Sr., who would start renovating the home. He would install a radiator system, which had not long been patented, an elevator, but the most impressive part of this home was the cave system beneath it. So if you don't know, St. Louis has a massive cave system running underneath. And this cave system contributed to the Lemp's success. So you see, the cave system is what made their product so good, as they needed a cool space to refrigerate the lager. But when refrigeration as we know it became available, William Sr. decided to renovate the caves so he could use it as a party space. So it went from a rudimentary fridge to a place to party. He would add an auditorium and a theater. On top of that, he needed a large swimming pool, and he would use the hot water from the brewery to warm it, or to, basically using the water. He would also add a bowling alley. So William Lemp Jr. would take on the family business in 1904, and this is where the issues start. So for one, William Sr. really did not want William Jr. to take over the business. The business was supposed to go to Frederick, who was William Sr.'s favorite son. However, Frederick died at the age of 28 in 1901 from heart failure. So now William Lemp Jr., he gives rich boy brat energy from what I've researched. He was married to a woman called Lillian Hanlon. So at first, they enjoyed their life together, spending the Lemp fortune, but William Jr. would get tired of Lillian and start cheating on her. And he would do this literally beneath her feet in the now converted caves. So there will be raucous parties complete with drinking and prostitutes. And supposedly one of these trysts led to the birth of Ezekiel Lemp. Now it's also been said that Ezekiel, aka Zeke, was Lillian's son. Either way, Zeke was said to have had what we now know as Down syndrome. And in cliche turn of the century rich people fashion, Zeke was shut away in the attic as though he was an embarrassment to the family. So when Zeke was living, people would pass by the home out on the street, and they would claim to see him looking out the window of the attic. Now, in 1908, William Jr. would actually divorce Lillian, so there's that. But the worst is yet to come, basically. So while Lemp's beer is taking St. Louis by storm, the family starts to experience suicides. So the first of which started with William Lemp Sr., the head of the family. He would lose his favorite son and later his friend, Frederick Pabst. And yes, that is of Pabst Blue Ribbon fame. So he began to retreat from the public eye, and his physical health began to decline. Finally, on February 13, 1904, William Sr. would take a .38 caliber revolver and shoot himself in the head. Elsa Lemp's suicide would come after her father. So Elsa Lemp had been married to Thomas Wright, but her marriage to him was not ideal. She was said to have said that her husband treated her as though she was insignificant, and she would divorce him, but then remarry him in 1920 while in New York City. Now, Elsa was said to have had abdominal issues that led to bouts of depression. So the night she returned from New York City, she would suffer one of these abdominal episodes. And the following morning, she told her husband she wanted to stay in bed and kind of recuperate, while her husband went to start his morning with a hot bath. So Elsa stayed in bed, and Thomas was said to have heard a sound from the bedroom. So in response, he went back into the bedroom to see what had happened, and he found his wife shot in the bed. She had used a revolver, the same gun that her father used. Now William Lemp Jr. would come next. And if you recall, William Lemp Jr. was too busy blowing the Lemp fortune on his house. So because of that, the equipment at the brewery began to fall into disrepair, and it wasn't updated. And William Lemp Sr. began to show the same symptoms that his father did. William Lemp Jr., I'm sorry. So he would become withdrawn. He would basically go through the motions at work. And he was also known for being unpredictable in his moods. Then on top of that, Prohibition hits, and it takes a toll on the brewing company. So at the age of 55 years old, he would commit suicide in his office on the first floor of the home with, you guessed it, a gun. So there was one more suicide following this, and that was the death of Charles Lemp in 1949. Once again, it was a gunshot that killed him, and the last 3 deaths were of natural causes. So William J. Lemp III died of a heart attack at the age of 42. Zeke Lemp, or as they called him, the Monkey Boy, died of natural causes in the attic. And then there was Edwin Lemp. So he died secluded in 1970 at the age of 90. His death was also due to natural causes. So the stories of the mansion go way back. So after the Lemps moved out, it became a boarding house. And residents would often hear knocking and phantom footsteps in the halls when no one was around. During its restoration, workers reported strange sounds and their tools vanishing. Now, as we may know, ghosts don't like when you change up what was theirs. So that might have been why the tools were disappearing. Once the renovation was completed, the house was turned into a restaurant and a bed and breakfast. So that was actually the purpose of the restoration. So customers at the restaurant often reported seeing glasses lifting off the bar and being thrown as though someone was pissed. Even scarier, people have seen the apparitions of members of the Lemp family. So these apparitions appear in the attic and the basement, or what the staff at the mansion call the gates of hell. So remember, the caves were where William Jr.'s party spot, where his party spot was. The grand staircase is another area for activity. People actually just hear like running up and down the stairs. But the basement and the attic are like the 2 creepiest, in my opinion. So the attic is said to be haunted by Zeke, aka the monkey boy. So people often see the ghost of Zeke looking out of the attic window as he did in life. That was actually his favorite thing to do. Investigators will leave toys for Zeke and find the toys have been moved the next day with no explanation. In William Lemp Sr.'s room, guests report hearing the ghostly reenactment of the moments prior to William Sr.'s death. So they will hear footfalls as though someone is running up the stairs and the door to the room being kicked open as though someone is trying to force themselves in as the door was locked, before. So even animals haunt the house. A tour guide was said to have heard the sound of horses outside William Lemp's room. Now, it was later discovered that the area outside his room, that is outside the house, was where they would hitch the horses. Now, the final question is, were the Lemps cursed? I believe the answer is yes and no. Not in the sense of a traditional curse, but but in the sense of the curse of the dark side of mental illness, mental health. I believe this family had an issue with depression and suicidal ideation and self-harm that could not be resolved, partly because of their own pride and I would say fear. So think of how people with mental conditions were treated back then. Now put yourself in the Lemp's shoes. Would you want to have to go through the barbaric treatments of that time? I think not. I certainly wouldn't want it. So also the Lemps had it all. Wealth, a successful brewery, a fine house. So there may have been a bit of denial there for some of the members of the family. I can't have some mental illness. I'm not crazy. I'm rich. We don't get that. So there you have it. I think mental illness was their curse of sorts. And if you'd like to hear more ghost stories this Halloween season, follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye. Basically, I'm doing my Victorian look. Look at these earrings. Can you see them? There you go. Look at that. And this is actually a sailor, a schoolgirl top from Japan. So this is my costume. But actually, I have one more story for y'all. So let's get comfortable. So one of the William Jr. So William Jr.'s ghost is a creeper. He is said to haunt his bathroom. Why is he a creeper? Because that bathroom is now a women's bathroom. And he will show up and peek over the stalls. Ew. Really? That's what you're doing. That's what you're choosing to do with your afterlife. What the actual hell? And people have reported this, women specifically, and seen this, and have been like, what the fuck? Bro, and at first they think it's a live man. They're like, yo, there's a dude and he is lurking in the bathroom. And the staff is like, no, he's not living. Yeah, he's not of this world, which makes it creepy. One more thing is one of the relatives, I think it was Charles. He had, in addition to becoming kind of reclusive, he was said to have become basically what we know now today as a germaphobe. And that's why I say that family had a curse of mental illness, because it ran the gamut. There was, suicidal ideation, I would say / self-harm, because I feel like if you shoot yourself in the head, that kind of goes beyond self-harm. But his thing was being a germaphobe. So yeah, that was something that I found kind of interesting about that family. Now, other people say that their curse comes from the caves, actually. Sorry, my eyes got really excited there. That was weird. But they say that the caves is what's doing this to these people. So they claim that like the caves have some kind of like evil energy type ish going on, and that's what was getting to the Lemps up on the surface. And also, caves in Missouri have a bit of a thing. So down in, is that Cape Girardeau? Correct me if I'm wrong, but no, Cape Girardeau. No, that's where I applied to college. I just told on myself. Anyways, no, it's Hannibal, Missouri. So Hannibal, Missouri has a pretty sizable cave system running underneath it, and they talk about this story actually that what's his name? Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, that guy. Yeah, he actually tells, like, he had known this story as a child about this man who preserved his dead daughter down there. He was a doctor, and I guess he was like grieving out of his mind from his daughter's death. You know, it's understandable. But he put her down there to like keep her pristine. And they said people would go down there and find her, and she would look like she was just sleeping. It just so happened that she was dressed to be put in a coffin. So like, what the Missouri? Like, really? Like, is this you right now? Are you okay? And there's actually a show on Travel Channel that talks about this. Yeah, it freaked, much like the Lemp Mansion, it freaked me out. Like, yo, like it was something else. There was a story where, okay, so it's actually a very sad story. So if this, I should say, I put it in that neighborhood, in that town in Hannibal, and those children disappeared and were never found. But people around town started seeing the ghost of these children in businesses or like buildings and homes. Specifically, I think it was like businesses where the caves ran underneath. Because you got to think about it. If it's like, okay, let's go back to the Lemps. Think about how they had their beer there underneath their beer in the caves to keep cool. You know, people will use those cave areas for storage. And so what I'm thinking is that the spirit of these little boys were like popping up in places to kind of like let them know, you know, hey, I'm here, or like be, you know, to just basically be known and sort of remembered. And they actually do have like this nice like memorial where the boys passed away, and they actually showed it in the special. I might actually watch that special tonight on Travel Channel. But yeah, like, man, I don't know why it creeps me out that Missouri's basically porous. I never think of the gateway to the West as being porous as far as like having caves running underneath it. I think of Kentucky, I think of the Appalachians, but I guess you got the Ozarks and stuff, so yeah. But I finally did it, y'all. I talked about the Lemp Mansion. And I gotta say, as I was telling the story, I got a little creeped out, little tingle. I don't know, but I was like, y'all, nah, don't worry. I'm gonna tell your story, and I'm gonna be respectful, relax. Like, I'm not finna sit here and like BS and be like, I'm sorry, YouTube. I'm not gonna be like unalived and you know that. No. I'm not gonna be cutesy about it, you know. But yeah. So I will see you on the next Painted Haint Halloween special. I hope you enjoyed this, including my rambling about Hannibal, Missouri, and the very creepy William Lemp Jr. What the is his problem? Yeah, he was a rich brat boy. I'm sorry. Anyways, see you later. Bye, and happy Halloween.